At exactly 2,217 hours local time on March 20th, 2026, in the pitch-black silence of the Indian Ocean, the crew of the USS Dewey, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer on patrol south of the Chagos Archipelago, experienced something no American naval officer had seen since the Cold War. The SBY-6 radar array, the most advanced phased array sensor ever placed on a surface combatant, lit up with a contact profile that the fire control computer took exactly 0.4 seconds to classify. Ballistic missile. Inbound. Terminal phase. Time to impact, 91 seconds. The target was Diego Garcia, the crown jewel of American strategic reach in the Indian Ocean, home to a hardened runway capable of sustaining B-52H Stratofortresses and B-2A Spirit stealth bombers simultaneously. The anchor of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. and Israeli joint campaign against Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure that had been grinding forward since February 28th. If Diego Garcia burned, the entire logistical backbone of America's air campaign in the Middle East went dark overnight. The tactical action officer aboard the Dewey, Lieutenant Commander Rachel Haynes, didn't wait for confirmation from CENTCOM. The Aegis Baseline 10 combat system had already generated a firing solution. In the time it takes a human to blink twice, the -41 Malawian Kwacha's vertical launch system opened Cell 14. A standard missile, 3-block eye roared out of the deck on a pillar of white fire, climbing into the tropical darkness at Mach 15. This was not a drill. This was Iran's answer to everything, and the world didn't know it yet. What the press reported was a partial truth. 2 Iranian intermediate-range ballistic missiles had been fired at Diego Garcia. One intercepted. One failed in flight. Tehran denied it immediately, calling the reports Zionist disinformation. But the denial was the tell, because the real story of what happened in that 91-second window, and what the U.S. Navy did in the 48 hours that followed, has never been fully declassified. To understand why Iran fired at Diego Garcia, you have to understand what Diego Garcia represented in the architecture of Operation Epic Fury. Since February 28th, the island's 12,000-foot runway had been running B-2 Spirit sorties around the clock. These are the aircraft that dropped the first 30,000-pound GBU, 57 massive ordnance penetrators in combat history, bunker busters designed specifically to collapse Iran's deeply buried Fordow nuclear enrichment facility. Each B-2 mission flying out of Diego Garcia represented another piece of Iran's missile production capacity reduced to rubble. Every sortie was a message from the Pentagon. There is nowhere deep enough. Iran could not shoot down the B-2s. The Spirit operates above 50,000 feet, uses low observable coatings that scatter radar returns into noise, and flies strike packages that IRGC air defense controllers never detect until the ordnance is already tracking toward its terminal phase. So the IRGC's strategic calculus shifted. If you cannot kill the aircraft over Tehran, you kill the runway they launch from. And Diego Garcia was, by every metric, the most audacious target Iran had ever attempted. At 2,370 miles from Iran's western coast, the base sat beyond every declared range estimate for Iran's ballistic missile arsenal. In early March, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had told NBC News directly, Iran had intentionally limited itself to a range below 2,000 kilometers because it did not want to be felt as a threat to anybody else in the world. That statement, as of 2,217 hours on March 20th, was proven to be a lie. The missile that the USS Dewey intercepted was an Ahmad-2 variant, a road-mobile, single-stage liquid-fueled ballistic missile with terminal maneuvering capability, modified with a secondary booster stage that extended its range to approximately 4,200 kilometers. Israeli military chief Eyal Zamir would later describe it as a 2-stage intercontinental ballistic missile. The Ahmad-2 modification had never appeared in any Western intelligence assessment. The IRGC Aerospace Force had developed and concealed it for exactly this moment, a strategic surprise weapon, held in reserve for the day NATO bases in the Indian Ocean became the instruments of Iran's destruction. The second missile, the one that failed in flight, did not malfunction. A classified U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler flying a signals intelligence orbit out of Diego Garcia itself, had been tracking the launch from the moment the IRGC's missile radar relays activated. Within seconds of the first missile leaving its mobile erector launcher on a hardened pad near Bandar Abbas, the Growler's ELQ-249 next-generation jammer pod locked onto the guidance uplink frequency and initiated a targeted electromagnetic pulse across the telemetry band. The second missile lost its mid-course correction data at an altitude of 140 kilometers. Its guidance system, receiving nothing but digital static from the ground control link, defaulted to a terminal ballistic arc that carried it 400 miles east of its intended target, harmlessly into open ocean. Iran had fired its most secret weapon. The U.S. had killed it silently, and no one outside of 3 classified briefing rooms knew the difference. But this was only the first layer of the crisis. At 0344 hours on March 21st, roughly 5 hours after the Diego Garcia launch, the acoustic sensor network operated by P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, flying a racetrack orbit over the southern Strait of Hormuz, registered a contact signature that sent the entire CENTCOM intelligence apparatus into emergency session. The /APS 154 Advanced Airborne Sensor, aboard the lead Poseidon, had been conducting synthetic aperture radar mapping of the Strait's shallow northern approaches when its bottom mapping sonar return revealed a cluster of metallic anomalies on the seafloor, spaced at irregular intervals. Located in the primary deep draft shipping lane used by supertankers, transiting from the Gulf of Oman into the Persian Gulf. Mines, not improvised devices, not shallow water drifters. The spectral return pattern matched the acoustic signature of the IRDM, Iran's domestically produced influence-triggered moored mine, a derivative of Soviet M52 architecture, fitted with ship-counting logic, magnetic loop detectors, and a passive seismic trigger designed to distinguish between a U.S. Navy warship and a commercial crude oil tanker. The mine's intelligence allowed it to wait, to count passing vessels, to detonate selectively. 12 had been positively identified in the first pass. The Poseidon crew requested a second radar sweep, tightening the resolution. By the time the data was processed aboard the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at altitude, to relay the sensor feed in real time to the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group commander, the confirmed count was 31 mines in the primary channel alone. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's daily oil supply moves, was effectively closed. And it was about to get dramatically worse. Simultaneously with the minefield discovery, National Security Agency signals intercepts out of Fort Meade flagged an encrypted burst transmission originating from a mobile communications node in the Keshem Island Tunnel Complex, Iran's hardened underground maritime warfare headquarters carved into the island's limestone geology, impervious to conventional precision munitions. The transmission was a flash category operational order to 3 concealed anti-ship missile batteries positioned along the Strait's northern coastline. The batteries were equipped with the North Sea 802, Iran's most capable sea-skimming anti-ship cruise missile, with a 120-kilometer range and a sea-skimming flight profile of 4 meters above the wave surface. The order was simple, devastating, and specific. Activate fire control radars. Prepare target packages on all vessels, military and commercial, within range. Await the launch authorization code word. The IRGC was preparing to threaten the entire maritime transit corridor with simultaneous multi-axis missile fire. Combined with a minefield, this created an effective kill zone that would paralyze global shipping through the world's most critical choke point. Brent crude had already crossed $112 a barrel. If the NOR batteries activated and engaged a supertanker, or worse, a U.S. escort vessel, the economic cascade would be irreversible within hours. CENTCOM Admiral Brad Cooper had approximately 17 minutes to respond before the batteries went live. What you need to understand about the geometry of the Strait of Hormuz in the third week of March 2026 is this. The U.S. Navy was not operating in a permissive environment. Every American surface combatant in the Strait was under continuous threat. Iran had already fired over 140 naval vessels worth of attack craft and anti-ship missiles against U.S. and coalition assets since February 28. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the flagship of the Carrier Strike Group, was at that moment dealing with a fire in its laundry compartment that had injured multiple sailors, not combat damage, but a mechanical casualty that had already triggered a partial operational stand-down. The Ford's air wing was cycling at reduced sortie rate. This meant the conventional response option, a wave of F/A, 18 Super Hornets screaming up the strait at low altitude to strike the coastal batteries before they activated, was too slow, too loud, and too exposed. The Nor batteries were positioned inside hardened revetments carved into the Zagros foothills. A conventional strike package approaching those revetments from seaward would be detected 60 seconds out by the battery's own surveillance radars. The IRGC missile crew had standing orders. If targeted, launch everything immediately. You cannot kill a missile battery by attacking it once it starts shooting. You have to kill it before it decides to shoot. Admiral Cooper needed a weapon that the Iranians could not see coming, and he had exactly one. At a depth of 280 meters below the surface of the Gulf of Oman, moving at 6 knots on a bearing of 027 degrees true, the USS Montana, a Virginia-class Block V nuclear attack submarine equipped with a Virginia payload module, adding 4 additional large-diameter payload tubes to its standard loadout, had been in surveillance position for 11 days. The Montana's commanding officer, Commander Jason Whitfield, had maintained absolute EMCAN, no active sonar, no radio transmissions except the extremely low-frequency signals his crew received but never returned. For 11 days, the Montana had been an acoustic ghost in the deep layer, listening to everything. The Montana sonar team had been tracking the Nor battery radar sites by their auxiliary power generator signatures, a low-frequency acoustic hum, roughly 47 Hz, produced by the Russian-supplied diesel generators used to power the hardened revetment's internal climate control systems. In the acoustic environment of the Gulf of Oman, that 47 Hz tone was as distinctive as a fingerprint. They knew the exact GPS coordinate of each battery. They had firing solutions waiting. At 0401 hours, Commander Whitfield received the ELF burst from CENTCOM. Execute Horatio. Authorization Romeo Kilo 7. This was the moment no Iranian intelligence officer had prepared for. From its VPM tubes, the Montana fired a 6-missile salvo of Tomahawk Block V land attack missiles, the latest production variant, equipped with an onboard millimeter-wave radar seeker, allowing the weapon to update its target picture in the terminal phase, even if GPS is jammed. The Tomahawks climbed to 200 feet, activated their terrain-following radar, and turned northwest. Flight time to the Keshem Island Tunnel Complex, 9 minutes, 40 seconds. Simultaneously, from the Montana's torpedo tubes, 4 -48 Malawian Quachas Mod 7 heavyweight torpedoes were released on a slow-speed run, not tracking a submarine, but following a pre-programmed waypoint sequence laid precisely over the GPS coordinates of the minefield. Each torpedo was programmed not to arm its warhead, but to activate its COTS. 3 active sonar suite at minimum range, generating a powerful broadband acoustic pulse, timed to sweep the mine's passive seismic triggers. Not to destroy the mines, to detonate them, one by one, sequentially, sweeping a 600-meter wide channel through the center of the shipping lane. This was not in any published U.S. Navy doctrine. It was an improvised solution developed aboard the Montana by her weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Prienair, over the preceding 72 hours. Her concept was simple in principle, terrifying in execution. Use a heavyweight torpedo as an acoustic minesweeping sled, moving at walking pace through the field, detonating every mine it could reach with its own acoustic signature before the mines could be triggered by a supertanker's hull. The risk was catastrophic. If any mine's counting logic failed to reset, if even one device detonated on magnetic trigger rather than seismic, Lieutenant Commander Nair's improvised sled and the 3 fish behind it would be destroyed, and the channel would remain closed. 11 mines detonated in sequence over a period of 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The sea surface above the strait erupted in 11 geysers of white water, each column rising 60 feet before collapsing back. Iranian naval radar operators on Keshem Island watched their screens in confusion. Nothing was attacking them. There were no incoming warships. The strait appeared to be destroying itself. Then the Tomahawks arrived. The Ketchum Island Tunnel Complex, protected by 6 meters of reinforced concrete ceiling and designed to survive a conventional precision strike, was not designed to survive 6 Tomahawk block versus arriving in a ripple salvo with an 8-second inter-impact interval. The first 2 weapons used their INS guidance to put themselves through the ventilation shafts, the only structural vulnerability in the facility's roof. The remaining 4 weapons impacted the auxiliary generator building, the communications antenna farm, and the hardened access roads. The 47 Hz generator signature on the Montana's passive sonar went silent at 0411 hours. The NOR batteries, cut off from the central command node in the tunnel complex, could not receive the launch authorization code word. Their crews, isolated inside hardened revetments with no communication, followed their standing orders. Without the code word, do not launch. Wait. They waited. They are still waiting. The mine channel cleared by the Montana's improvised acoustic sweep was 620 meters wide, sufficient for supertanker transit, with a 180-meter safety margin on each side. By 0630 hours local time on March 21st, CENTCOM had transmitted the channel coordinates and the mine clearance status to the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Cell in Dubai, which forwarded the routing advisory to 17 supertankers holding positions south of the Hormuz approaches. The first tanker, the Marin Poseidon, a Greek-flagged VLCC, carrying 2.1 million barrels of Kuwaiti crude, began its transit at 0714 hours. Its crew did not know the channel had been cleared by a torpedo that had never been publicly announced. They knew only that someone somewhere had opened the door. On the surface, the world saw a news cycle about a failed Iranian missile attack on Diego Garcia and a U.S. military operation near the Strait of Hormuz. The Tomahawk strike on Ketchum Island was characterized by CENTCOM as a precision strike on hardened missile storage facilities. The mine sweep was never acknowledged. The Montana remained on station, silent at depth. Trump wrote on Truth Social at 0830 that morning, "The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed, as necessary, by other nations who use it. The United States does not." It was a diplomatic negotiating position, designed for public consumption. Privately, the president had already been briefed on the Montana's operation, had reviewed the after-action summary in a 2-page intelligence product, and had been shown satellite imagery of the Ketchum Island complex taken 90 minutes after the strike. The facility that Iran spent 11 years and an estimated $2.3 billion constructing to survive an American air campaign had been neutralized in 9 minutes and 40 seconds by a submarine that no Iranian radar ever detected. But the geopolitical residue of what Iran had attempted did not dissolve with the success of the Montana's mission. The discovery of the undisclosed 4,200-kilometer Ahmad-2 variant, the 2-stage missile that had been aimed at Diego Garcia, rewrote every Western intelligence assessment of Iran's strategic reach. The base is the same distance from Iran as Paris, as Munich, as Warsaw. At 0900 hours on March 21st, the Israeli defense minister stood before cameras and stated what no Western government wanted to acknowledge: Europe is within range. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, asked about the Diego Garcia strike on CBS's Face the Nation, would only say the alliance was looking into it. But 3 NATO intelligence chiefs knew exactly what the Ahmad-2's range envelope meant for Article 5 calculations. The phone lines between Brussels, London, and Washington ran hot for 36 straight hours. Bahrain's defense forces, by that same morning, had intercepted and destroyed a total of 143 Iranian missiles and 242 drones since February 28th. Saudi Arabia shot down 47 drones in a single 3-hour window. The UAE intercepted 3 ballistic missiles and 8 drone attacks in one night. Iran was depleting its own arsenal at a rate that American intelligence analysts estimated as unsustainable beyond 90 days. But the Ahmad-2 variant was a different equation entirely. A low-volume, high-value strategic weapon held separately from the operational inventory, accountable to no depletion rate because it was never intended to be fired in salvos. It was designed to be fired once, to end a base, to end a campaign. It had been designed to end Diego Garcia. The USS Dewey's Standard Missile, 3 Block IA had prevented that, at a cost of $27 million for one interceptor round. One shot, one kill, 91 seconds from radar track to intercept. As of day 24 of Operation Epic Fury, Trump publicly announced a 5-day pause on his threat to obliterate Iran's power plants, characterizing it as a result of good and productive peace talks. Iranian state media denied any talks had occurred, claiming Trump retreated out of fear of Iran's response. A senior Iranian foreign ministry official confirmed to CBS News, quietly, that we received points from the U.S. through mediators, and they are being reviewed. Somewhere in the Gulf of Oman, at 280 meters depth, the USS Montana turned to a new bearing and resumed her patrol. The Strait of Hormuz was open, but the new Ahmad 2 data was already being fed into updated strike package planning for the next B-2 mission out of Diego Garcia, this time targeting the Mobile Erector Launcher Regiment responsible for the March 20th attack. The war has not ended. It has evolved. The message from the Montana's mission was unambiguous, even if it was never spoken aloud in any press briefing. The U.S. can reach you anywhere, at any depth, at any range, through any amount of concrete, without showing you a single radar return, without a single visible launch signature, without a single public announcement. Iran fired its most secret missile. The United States answered with its most invisible weapon, and the Strait of Hormuz opened, silently, like a door pushed from the inside. What you witnessed in the news over the past 7 days, the intercepts, the ultimatums, the diplomatic maneuvering, the mine reports, the Dimona strikes, was the visible surface of a much deeper battle being waged in the dark, at depth, in frequencies the human ear cannot hear. The real war is not being fought on the front pages. It is being decided in the silence below the thermocline. And if you think Iran's next move has already been anticipated, comment 1 below, because the intelligence agencies of 3 nations are betting their careers that it has. Like this video, subscribe, and turn notifications on, because the next classified operation in this campaign involves an asset the Pentagon has never publicly confirmed is in the region, and the decision on whether to use it is being made right now. Stay with us. The board is not yet set.